Full disclosure, this story contains details of brutal murders that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Be weird, be rude, stay alive. Hey, true crime fans, imagine a city gripped by terror where stepping out after dark could be a death sentence. A place where the sound of footsteps behind you sends chills down your spine, and every shadow holds the potential for unspeakable horror. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. This was the reality for the residents of Austin, Texas in the 1880s. Before Jack the Ripper stalked the streets of London, before H.H. Holmes built his murder castle in Chicago, an unknown killer was leaving a trail of blood through the Lone Star State's capital. This is the story of the Servant Girl Annihilator, America's first documented serial killer, a predator who struck without warning, crossing racial and social boundaries in a way that was almost unheard of at the time. For over a year, this phantom terrorized Austin, claiming at least 8 lives and leaving a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. So lock your doors, check your windows, and prepare to journey back to a time when a killer walked free and an entire city lived in fear. This is the chilling tale of the Servant Girl Annihilator. The Servant Girl Annihilator, America's first serial killer. In the quiet moonlit streets of Austin, Texas, during the 1880s, a sinister presence lurked in the shadows. As the city slept, a predator stalked its prey, leaving a trail of blood and terror in his wake. This is the chilling tale of the Servant Girl Annihilator, a killer who would come to be known as America's first serial murderer. The year was 1884, and Austin was a bustling frontier town on the cusp of modernity. Gas lamps flickered in the streets, casting eerie shadows on the wooden sidewalks. The sound of horse-drawn carriages echoed through the night, mingling with the distant laughter from saloons and the whispered conversations of couples strolling arm in arm. But beneath this veneer of progress and civility, a darkness was brewing. On New Year's Eve, as the city prepared to usher in 1885, the first victim fell. Molly Smith, a 25-year-old African-American servant, was found brutally murdered behind her employer's home. Her body bore the marks of a savage attack. Her head had been split open with an axe, and she had been dragged from her room into the backyard. The killer had left behind a bloody axe and a trail of footprints in the frost-covered ground. The city was shocked, but few could have imagined that this was just the beginning of a reign of terror that would grip Austin for the next year. As winter gave way to spring, the killer struck again. On March 19, 1885, Clara Strand and Christine Martinson, 2 Swedish servant girls, were attacked in their sleep. Unlike Molly Smith, they survived the assault, but their descriptions of the attacker were vague and conflicting. One claimed he was a black man, the other insisted he was white. The only thing they agreed on was the unmistakable glint of a knife in the darkness. The attacks continued throughout the year, each more brutal than the last. Eliza Shelley, a young mother, was found dead in May, her body mutilated beyond recognition. In August, Rebecca Ramey and her 11-year-old daughter Mary were attacked. Rebecca survived, but young Mary's life was tragically cut short. As the body count rose, so did the panic in Austin. The city, once known for its peaceful streets and friendly inhabitants, was transformed into a place of terror and suspicion. Women were afraid to walk alone at night, and many refused to work as servants, fearing they would be the next victims. The police were baffled, unable to find any concrete leads or connections between the victims. The killer seemed to strike at random, targeting both black and white victims, crossing racial and social boundaries in a way that was almost unheard of at the time. This indiscriminate choice of victims only added to the fear and confusion gripping the city. As the murders continued, theories began to circulate. Some believed the killer was a vengeful former slave. Others thought it might be a deranged doctor or butcher, given the brutal nature of the attacks. Wild rumors spread of shape-shifting monsters and supernatural beings stalking the streets of Austin. The press had a field day with the murders, dubbing the unknown killer the Servant Girl Annihilator. This moniker, coined by O. Henry, the famous short story writer who was living in Austin at the time, would stick, cementing the killer's place in the annals of true crime history. Despite the intense media coverage and the growing pressure on law enforcement, the killer remained elusive. The police, led by Chief Grooms Lee, were criticized for their inability to solve the case. They brought in bloodhounds, offered rewards, and even consulted with detectives from other cities, but to no avail. As 1885 drew to a close, the city hoped that the new year would bring an end to the nightmare. But on Christmas Eve, the Servant Girl Annihilator struck again, this time with a brutality that would shock even the most hardened investigators. Susan Hancock, a well-respected white woman, was found murdered in her bed. Her husband, awakened by her screams, rushed to her aid but was too late. The killer had already fled into the night. Just an hour later, Eula Phillips, another white woman, was discovered dead in her home. Her husband, James, was found unconscious nearby, leading some to suspect his involvement. These final murders marked a significant shift in the killer's pattern. For the first time, he had targeted wealthy white women rather than servants. This change in victim profile only added to the mystery surrounding the case. As the new year dawned, the murders abruptly ceased. The Servant Girl Annihilator seemed to vanish as mysteriously as he had appeared, leaving behind a traumatized city and a trail of unanswered questions. In the years that followed, various theories emerged about the identity of the killer. Some believed that the murders were the work of multiple individuals rather than a single serial killer. Others pointed to specific suspects, including a Malaysian cook named Maurice who had worked for one of the victims, and a man named Nathan Elgin who was shot and killed while attacking a woman in 1886. One of the most intriguing theories to emerge in recent years is the possible connection between the Servant Girl Annihilator and Jack the Ripper. Some researchers have noted similarities in the modus operandi of the two killers and have speculated that they might be the same person. The timing is certainly suggestive. The Austin murders ended in 1885, just 3 years before Jack the Ripper began his reign of terror in London. However, despite these theories and decades of investigation, the true identity of the Servant Girl Annihilator remains a mystery to this day. The case continues to fascinate true crime enthusiasts and historians alike, not only for its brutality, but also for its historical significance. The Servant Girl Annihilator murders occurred at a time when the concept of a serial killer did not exist in the public consciousness. The term itself wouldn't be coined until nearly a century later. Yet the pattern of killings, the apparent lack of motive, and the killer's ability to evade capture all point to what we now recognize as serial killer behavior. This case is often cited as one of the earliest documented instances of serial murder in the United States, predating even the infamous H.H. Holmes, who is often erroneously referred to as America's first serial killer. The Servant Girl Annihilator case thus holds a unique place in the history of crime in America, marking a dark milestone in the nation's understanding of this type of criminal behavior. The impact of these murders on Austin was profound and long-lasting. The city, which had been growing rapidly in the 1880s, saw its progress stunted by the wave of fear that gripped its residents. Many people left Austin fearing for their safety. Those who remained lived in constant fear, their trust in their neighbors, and in the ability of the authorities to protect them severely shaken. The case also highlighted the racial tensions that existed in post-Civil War Texas. The fact that the early victims were predominantly African-American women led to accusations of police indifference and sparked discussions about the value placed on Black lives in the South. It wasn't until white victims were targeted that the case received widespread attention and resources, a sad reflection of the racial inequalities of the time. The legacy of the Servant Girl Annihilator extends beyond the immediate impact on Austin and its residents. The case has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and even a feature film. It continues to be studied by criminologists and true crime enthusiasts who pore over the details in hopes of uncovering new clues that might finally solve this century-old mystery. One of the most intriguing aspects of the case is how it seems to foreshadow many of the elements that would become common in later serial killer cases. The seemingly random selection of victims, the escalation in violence over time, the taunting of authorities through bold and risky kills. All these elements would become familiar tropes in the annals of serial killer lore. The case also highlights the limitations of 19th century forensic science and investigative techniques. With no fingerprinting, no DNA analysis, and only rudimentary understanding of crime scene preservation, the investigators were severely handicapped in their efforts to solve the case. One can't help but wonder how differently the investigation might have proceeded with modern forensic tools at their disposal. As we look back on the Servant Girl Annihilator case from our 21st century perspective, it's easy to see it as a harbinger of the darker aspects of modernity, the anonymity of urban life, the breakdown of traditional community bonds, the ability of individuals to commit heinous acts and disappear into the crowd. All these elements were present in 1880s Austin, just as they would be in countless cities in the decades to come. The case also serves as a chilling reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by marginalized members of society. The fact that the killer initially targeted servant women, individuals who were often isolated, working in unfamiliar homes, and with little social power, speaks to a pattern of victimization that continues to this day. Despite the passage of time, the Servant Girl Annihilator case continues to captivate and horrify in equal measure. It stands as a dark chapter in American history, a grim reminder of the capacity for evil that lurks within human society. But it also serves as a testament to the enduring human desire for justice and understanding, even in the face of seemingly unsolvable mysteries. As we continue to grapple with issues of crime, justice, and social inequality in our own time, the story of the Servant Girl Annihilator remains eerily relevant. It reminds us of the progress we've made in forensic science and criminal investigation, but also of the persistent challenges we face in creating safe and just communities for all. The case of the Servant Girl Annihilator may never be solved, joining the ranks of other infamous unsolved crimes like the Black Dahlia murder or the Zodiac killings. But its impact on true crime history and American culture is undeniable. It continues to inspire research, debate, and speculation, ensuring that the memory of those tragic events in 1884 and 1885 will not fade away. As we reflect on this dark chapter of history, we're left with more questions than answers. Who was the Servant Girl Annihilator? What drove him to commit such horrific acts? And perhaps most chillingly, did he really stop killing? Or did he simply move on to new hunting grounds? These questions may never be fully answered, but they continue to drive our fascination with this case. They speak to our deep-seated need to understand the darkest aspects of human nature, to make sense of the senseless, to bring order to chaos. The story of the Servant Girl Annihilator serves as a grim reminder of the shadows that lurk at the edges of even the most civilized societies. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, race, and justice. And it stands as a testament to the resilience of communities in the face of unimaginable terror. As we close this chapter on the Servant Girl Annihilator, we're left with a sense of unfinished business, a mystery that refuses to be solved. But perhaps that's fitting. After all, some of the most enduring stories are those that leave us with questions that refuse to provide easy answers or neat resolutions. The case of the Servant Girl Annihilator will likely continue to fascinate and horrify for generations to come. It serves as a chilling reminder of a time when a killer stalked the streets of Austin with impunity, leaving a trail of blood and fear in his wake. And it stands as a stark warning of the darkness that can lurk within the human heart, waiting for the right moment to emerge. As we move forward, let us remember the victims of these heinous crimes: Molly Smith, Eliza Shelley, Irene Cross, Mary Ramey, Rebecca Ramey, Clara Strand, Christine Martinson, Susan Hancock, and Eula Phillips. Their stories, tragically cut short, serve as a reminder of the human cost of such senseless violence. And let us also remember the city of Austin, forever changed by these events. A city that faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger, if forever scarred. A city that stands as a testament to human resilience in the face of unspeakable evil. The case of the Servant Girl Annihilator may be over a century old, but its lessons and its warnings remain as relevant today as they were in 1885. As we continue to grapple with issues of crime, justice, and social inequality, let us not forget the lessons of this dark chapter in American history. For in remembering, we honor the victims. In studying, we arm ourselves against future threats. And in telling these stories, we ensure that the truth, no matter how dark, is never forgotten. The mystery of the Servant Girl Annihilator may never be solved, but as long as we continue to seek answers, to question and to remember, the victims of these horrific crimes will never truly be forgotten. If you found this deep dive into one of America's earliest and most chilling serial killer cases intriguing, we encourage you to continue exploring the darker chapters of history. The story of the Servant Girl Annihilator is just one of many unsolved mysteries that continue to captivate and horrify us to this day. As we've seen, the impact of these crimes extends far beyond the immediate victims and their families. They shape our understanding of criminal behavior, influence our approach to law enforcement and forensic science, and force us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society and ourselves. By delving into these historical cases, we not only honor the memory of the victims, but also gain valuable insights into the nature of evil and the resilience of the human spirit. We learn from the mistakes of the past and strive to create a safer, more just world for future generations. If you found this exploration of the Servant Girl Annihilator case compelling, we encourage you to continue your journey into the world of true crime. There are countless other cases waiting to be discovered, each with its own unique set of circumstances, challenges, and lessons to be learned. Remember, as you delve deeper into these dark tales, to approach them with empathy and respect for the victims and their families. True crime is not just about the sensational details or the thrill of the mystery. It's about understanding the human impact of these events and working towards a world where such tragedies are less likely to occur. We hope this deep dive into the case of the Servant Girl Annihilator has sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to look beyond the surface of historical events. There's always more to discover, more connections to be made, and more lessons to be learned. If you've enjoyed this content and would like to see more in-depth explorations of historical true crime cases, we invite you to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts or questions, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue to produce high-quality content on fascinating topics like this one. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark heart of 19th century Austin. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, the past is never as far away as we might think.